I was telling Celia back here, uh, I'm exhausted. I came. I went to not to sound all pretentious, but I went to, at a jacuzzi earlier on, and man, I think this drained me. So my body language was all jacked right now, and like so. Don't take it personal, okay? This was if you noticed, but the first time I read in a long time, and I always come out to when I can to support Richie, just because he's such a workhorse. When it comes to the open mics and the performance and the voice and the MC that he is, and it's cool to see that he's got help over here, backing him up. I was, he needs it. He's got a lot. He does a lot with the content, right? With the kick-ass camera, kick-ass lens, the whole lighting scenario. It's like really good for social media and for all y'all, right? So, I'm working on my third book of poetry, possibly a fourth book, another memoir novel for a prominent person here. So, but my other book, I'm excited about it just because I've been working on it for years and inadvertently, not like directly, just throughout, I patch what I've written here and there. And I like it because it's like a lot of short poems, really brief. And I wouldn't call them haikus because I won't even pretend to be following the pentameter of that. I just call them compressed poems. And this one here is kind of an impetus to that. This next book that I'm writing, it was a really brief one here, and I remember I got this one, and when this was translated by the previous person that ran the Mexican embassy, Dr. Cortazar. He was a Harvard PhD, but he refused to speak English, right? And to get a PhD from Harvard, you have to know English, obviously. And so I always found it peculiar, but he was from Juarez, and he had actually gotten kidnapped, during the drug wars. Nobody really knew this, and it was so transactional. Like he was telling me, and I'll name drop, a big famous poet from Albuquerque, Jimmy Santiago Baca. We were at the tap right over here, and he was telling us how they picked him up, with the gun to the side. They took him to the hotel room, had him there for 2 days. They had a lawyer, Mexican lawyer, call his family, call another lawyer. The money was whatever it was had, and they let him go. It wasn't dramatic. He wasn't beat up. He wasn't cut. Nothing like that. And this poem that I'm reading here was one of his favorite poems because he translated this book, and it's really short, and it's called Fear. And I think it's the antithesis of what we see a lot on in terms of like positive affirmation writings and these sort of this movement that's been around for a while, which I'm not criticizing. I think it's viable. If it works for you, awesome. It's worked for me to some extent. But there's nothing like poignancy, right? Reality, truth. And this is kind of what I saw tonight. It was like a harmonizing of melancholy. And that was cool, So I'll sort of work with that as I'll leverage that as catharsis, a collective catharsis that we're having here. So this is called Fear. Fear is the spice that flavors us. It bathes us, shows us how to cry when we ought to laugh. Prayer becomes a silent nihilism, pouncing on the will to hope. That was that. And then it's, thank you, a direct translation, right? I think that's one of the things that made this book, I dare say, a success in terms of the Southwest Book Award, which I never would have thought. That's not true. I actually did plan it out, and for years, and it was part of my plot point there. But I didn't really know if it would happen, but it did. And the reason why is because of the translation that I had, because it's 1 page English and then 1 page Spanish. And I was also very lucky enough to have Dr. I'm sorry, Miguel Algarin, who started the New Rican Poets Cafe up in Lower East Side, Manhattan, edit this book. So it was a compilation of like a lot of maestros, and I took a different educational route. I didn't go through the academia like Richie and like Candace and a lot of my colleagues. I was very let's just use the word neurodivergent, right? I like that word or that phrase in there. I was like all over the place, and I was really I wanted to be more of a visual storyteller, filmmaker, and so I went everywhere. So when I brought it back full circle, it led to this, right? So the thing is that it's a direct translation. So I'll read the poem in Spanish. Miedo. El miedo es la especia que nos da sabor, nos baña, nos enseña cómo llorar cuando debemos reír. La oración se convierte en un nihilismo silencioso, avalándose sobre la bondad de la esperanza. Same poem, guys. I'll read one more because I really am tired. I want to get everybody else to get up here, and I want to go to bed. Let me see here. This one here is, I think this is a better one here. Let me see. Yeah, I'll read this one. It's a kind of a homage to my cousins in Juarez, right? So it's called El Hospital. El Hospital. Chicharo, Pepe, y Nene, my cousins, my Juarez cousins, and I run through the alleyways after throwing rocks at the rivals from across the barrio. And from that angle, you can see Bowie High, Cesar Chavez Highway, and the star on the mountain in El Paso. And my mom wanted to stay in Juarez so that I would get the childhood experience of spending time with my cousins, Manuel, their father, thin, light skin, short, thinning hair, always carried a guitar with him. Unlike his brothers, he wasn't a mechanic. He became a preacher man. His wife, Sandra, worked as a nurse at the local hospital, a light blue 4-story building with broken windows. And even at that young age, I knew it could not provide the best of care. And so we'd run back home to get some food, Pepe cooking it up, or rice broth, little rice stars boiled in hot water with jalapeno. Chicharo and Nene were tough. They were a different kind of tough. Tough guys from the projects in El Paso were pretty tough. But Juarez tough, it almost ensured a survival where fists, bottles, machetes, and rocks were the only primordial elements of protection. Pain, sublimated poker faces, picturesque molding of masculinity was the norm. That same third world tough that made some of the best boxers and fighters in the world. So we showered outside these buildings that didn't have individual bathrooms. Everyone had to shower outside together. The three of us went into the cement shower, and hard rock and concrete served as the floor. First time I ever did that. Public school showers were different. This was intimacy made public, but innocence was tantamount here. I felt completely at ease. Then Chicharo begins to spew out a diarrhea kind of shit. And I remember it clearly, and then it pulls me out as we leave Chicharo in there alone crying. Ama, Chicharo got himself all greasy. Nene screams outside. Nene seems almost disappointed as Chicharo stays inside crying. And I was struck by his crying because he was tough. But this was out of his control. It was a biological kind of shame. I was really hurt by that. I felt like crying there with him. I felt like huddling with him and holding him as he was there alone with the yellow excretion coming out of him. The water continued to pour from the shower head as he lay crying on the floor, utterly vulnerable, as Sandra, the babysitter, came running to his rescue. All right, I'll leave you with one more. That was a little much, all right? That's one of the more intense ones in there. All right, yeah, this one's cool. I like this one here. This is called Concrete and Rain. Waterfalls find their way through the smallest of cracks, whether they be concrete sewers, parking lots, or alleyways. We welcome the late night drizzle, befriend the cold chill as the sun sleeps in my desert hometown of El Paso. And I walk down the alleyway through rainfall, darkness and moonlight, dogs barking as lost spirits saunter in backyards where I see my shadows looking back at me, reminding me of yesterdays and tomorrows. Tiny rivers filled with pebbles, oil, and cigarette butts. They trickle past me. The rain coming down, flowing around me. The sound and smell of it entering my skin. It creates the possibility of purity. The night rain is my forefather and my son. Thank you.